Some video games that run too long end up ruining their own identity. We're gonna watch 8 video game franchises that ruined their identity today. We're gonna talk a little bit why games ruin themselves. Is it money? Yeah, a lot of times it actually is money. So let's go.
Great Call of Duty. What even is Call of Duty in 2023? While it used to run annually,
A money cow.
developers each getting 3 years to make new entries into their own sub-franchises, now it's an all-hands-on-deck affair with every developer across Activision contributing to one release each year.
Call of Duty is like a country. They just do everything at this point. I'm surprised there's not Call of Duty carts where you drive around with Homelander and Snoop Dogg because they're in the games now. They started putting content creators in the games. I remember back in 2007 where the only thing that my wee little heart wanted to do when I was like, 11, 12 years old was go on Xbox Live and play Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare with my friends. And when I got to do that, it was amazing. I loved early Call of Duty. Call of Duty 4, World at War, Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 2. That was the peak of the series. And then people started to get bored with it. So they decided to go in a different direction because they wanted to do something a bit different, revitalize the series. They went into the future. They went into sci-fi. They added jetpacks. And then at that point, is it even the same game anymore? If you change up the way that you play it in such a massive way, is it really truly the same thing? What is it that unifies Call of Duty series? Because it's not all in the same universe. It's not like they have a coherent storyline that from game to game to game to game to game, they all follow the same storyline. They're all in their own little universes, or there'll sometimes be a group of games that kind of follow a sequel kind of style of format. But what is it that unifies these games other than the style of play that they changed up so much
to get it over the line? Not only has that led to a strange release schedule where Modern Warfare 2 is immediately followed a year later by Modern Warfare 3, but that many warring creative voices has naturally led to the series feeling disparate and lacking cohesion. Take the beloved Zombies mode, for instance. Once a Treyarch specialty, the mode has since become a standard COD staple, with new versions of it being included in a bunch of different sub-franchises, whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah, I think the problem with a lot of these modes that they added, especially into COD, is that once you add something in, the players come to expect it, especially if they really like it. And when Zombies came out, oh my god, people loved Zombies. I loved Zombies. I really have fond memories of sitting in high school with my mates, sitting in the corner in the first ever Zombies map on World at War with my MG42, just gunning them down as they come. We buy the ray gun, you go to the mystery box, you argue over who's gonna open the doors. Like, there's so many good memories assigned to that. So they keep having to add it into the new games. And when you keep adding it into the new games, you have to make it bigger and better. So you take the Easter eggs and you extrapolate it out into a story that I watched a lore video on that was 30 minutes, and I still don't understand the lore because there's another lore video that's 6 hours that'll truly explain the lore. And since you have to keep building on it and keep going and make it bigger and bigger and bigger, it just becomes a convoluted, confusing mess at some points, and then you get what Call of Duty is today.
It is the overarching story and natural mechanical progression of its original inclusion in Treyarch games, and in its place is, well, just a Zombies mode, thrown in any new release that's lacking in content. And then there's Warzone. What started off as a PUBG killer has slowly morphed into Fortnite. While COD games have admittedly always had wacky crossovers and out there skins for years, the volume of this pop culture crossover in what's otherwise a grounded battle royale experience has gotten outrageous. I mean, fans are just getting over the inclusion of the boys skins and superpowers in the game when they're about to be hit with the next battle pass, which boasts skins for Snoop Dogg and Nicki Minaj.
When you add superheroes into a Call of Duty game and have all these like crazy paint on your guns and nothing makes sense anymore, and you're running around, you got Homelander running around with Snoop Dogg trying to get an epic victory royale, it just kind of loses all cohesion, all meaning. Call of Duty started out as a very serious, down-to-earth war simulator type game. Now, because it's made so much money and they have to make it crazier than last time and we have to keep up with the current trends, they have done that, to their credit. They haven't fallen off like Halo did. And it breaks my heart to say that Halo fell off, but Halo fell off, right? And the reason why Halo fell off is it just didn't keep up with the trends. They made new games that didn't appeal to the core base of players, and it didn't appeal to new players, but they tried to do a mishmash, and when you try to appease everyone, you end up appeasing no one. So now Call of Duty appeases to like the Fortnite base of the Battle Royale enjoyers that enjoy a little bit of wackiness and craziness, and I think a lot of the old players that used to play Call of Duty have fallen off, like myself. I used to love Call of Duty, I never play it anymore, because it's just not the same game that I used to enjoy back in the day.
Where these used to be fun one-off events, now they're just kind of the norm. Number 7, Assassin's Creed. The original Assassin's Creed games felt like a breath of fresh air for the gaming industry, tightly focused on social stealth, parkour, and an interesting Assassins v Templar story with a sci-fi twist. However, after years of annualized releases that became increasingly buggy and stale, fresh ideas were needed. Rather than figure out how to take the core components of the series and provide a new spin on them, though, Ubisoft looked to other games for inspiration.
I think Unity was a massive turning point in Assassin's Creed. As soon as that game came out, everyone was like, hold on, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is awful. I did hear that Unity was kind of good if you were able to get past like the performance issues and all the issues there. But the problem is, it was tainted so much by a really bad release. And then people realized when the next game came out, which was Syndicate, they were like, hold on, wait, this is kind of boring now, actually. What's going on here? So they pivot. They pivot into RPGs, thinking that, okay, we'll just target this new audience and we'll get all this content. We'll shove all this content in the game. And they make Origins, and then they make Odyssey, and then they make Valhalla, and they pack it full of content. They're like, you can level up, you can get gear, you can do all these things that you can do in RPGs. And that didn't really appeal to me personally, because I love RPGs, but I hate grinding in open worlds that have nothing going on in them, where you spend half the game just running around, and that's exactly what Odyssey was. Never played Origins, I played Valhalla, and 90% of that game is just running from place to place, doing some ridiculous, boring side quests so you can grind up and you can level up so that you'll actually be a decent level to go and take on the next story mission, which is also like kind of boring. Going to Assassin's Creed is like going to a 9-to-5 job. It doesn't give you that same pleasure that a really truly fantastic game did, and it doesn't give you the same pleasure that the early Assassin's Creed games did, like Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 2 was absolute peak. It was fantastic. But eventually the formula gets kind of old, and the way that they pivoted to try and make up for that just made it even more boring for me.
From Assassin's Creed Origins onwards, the franchise turned into a bloated action RPG that included every sandbox trope under the sun. Incorporating elements from The Witcher 3 in particular, modern Assassin's Creed is trying to be the every game, with a loot system that wouldn't feel out of place in Destiny, combat based around abilities and cooldowns, and a massive open world that isn't built around parkour. And again, that's not to say these elements haven't been enjoyable, but when there's barely a focus on the assassins and their stories in a game called Assassin's Creed, then why give it this title at all? Let it be something else.
They need to rely on the brand name. That's why. You need a brand to sell something, and if they didn't have the Assassin's Creeds, then what do you have? If you call it something different, because it's a completely different type of game that isn't really relying on assassins as much, the story for Assassin's Creed pretty much ended at Assassin's Creed 3. After that, they're just making things up as they go along, and it's getting goofier and goofier and goofier as you go. And I'm not just trying to say that if you like this style of gameplay that Odyssey and Valhalla has, the kind of not super dopamine-inducing, but a little bit enjoyable grinds through a big open world that looks quite pretty, and it has a lot of value in the story, and some of the things you can do are really, really cool, but as a whole product, it's lacking.
Though the upcoming Assassin's Creed Mirage is largely dropping this new approach and going back to basics, this will be shortly.
I'm excited for that.
Ubisoft have already announced plans for a live service future for the franchise.
No, dude. No, kill the live service. Take it out the back and shoot it. Shoot it with a gun. Why are there so many live service games? You don't need so many live service games. They want money. They want money. They say, ooh, live service games. They make so much money. We need money, actually. So every freaking game has to be a live service game. The biggest heartbreaker to me was Anthem. BioWare dropped all the cool RPG roots that they had back when they made Dragon Age Origins and the original Mass Effect, and they dropped it and they made Anthem because they need live service games to make money. And it flopped. And I think every live service game that is just out there to make a quick dollar, that doesn't actually care about the gameplay, doesn't care about making something good, should flop. I want them all to go and burn in a volcano. When developers release stuff like Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3, and maybe Starfield will be good, we'll see, then those are the games that deserve to really perform well, and those are the games that I really want to do as good as possible because it appeals to me personally. I'm a little bit biased, of course, but all this live service bullshit is just so annoying now.
Number 6, Battlefield. As will be the case with so many franchises on this list, the Battlefield series would be fine if the developers were just allowed to make a Battlefield game. Unfortunately, EA isn't content with just selling 15 million copies of each new game to its dedicated player base.
15 million?
Visions Battlefield as a larger moneymaker, something that appeals to both fans of the franchise, but also fans of other shooters. As a result, the last few games have made concessions to more casual audiences, removing or diluting classic mechanics and features, especially those centered around team play. We've seen the likes of Battlefield 2042 introduce hero shooter style operators in place of the regular class system, half-baked attempts at battle royale and extraction game modes, flatter, less detailed maps, and far less environmental destruction.
I'm sensing kind of a theme here. It seems like a lot of the games that really lose their way from a very good roots are something that started doing one specific thing really well, and then when they branch out into all these different things, they lose their way, but also they become really bad at doing all these different things. Because making games is really, really hard. Making a game that does one thing is a little bit easier than making a game that does 7 billion different things when you have a massive team in a massive studio like Ubisoft making Battlefield or EA making Battlefield. They try to do all these different things because they have the managerial people at the top like, oh, those Battle Royale games, they're doing really good, see? So we need to do one of those. And those operators in Call of Duty, they like those operators. We need to put them in a game too. And then the developers are like, at the bottom like, okay, I'll try, I guess, but I wasn't really good at that, and that's not really what we do here. We're not experts at that, but I guess we'll try our best. So all the quality gets stripped out the game and replaced by things that managers think that people want.
Fans, though, don't come to this series for an Overwatch clone or a Call of Duty clone, but to, well, play Battlefield. EA doesn't seem to understand that, though. In order for it to bring in billions, the company wants Battlefield to appeal to every shooter fan, not understanding that, as the cliche goes, that'll only result in it appealing to nobody. Number 5.
Please just let developers do what they're good at. What are the biggest games that get released? Like, if you just take Baldur's Gate for an example, it is a massive game. It did so well. And it did really well in a niche that people don't really like. It's such an incredibly specific niche. Dungeons and Dragons isometric RPG. That doesn't sound like a system seller. That doesn't sound like a massive thing. But Larian Studios, which is a private company, so it doesn't have to appease stockholders, is a company that is really good at doing that one specific thing. Because they made the Divinity games, the Divinity games are fantastic, and they've just refined their skills at doing the same thing over and over again and just getting better and better and better. And the company that made Tears of the Kingdom, they make games like that, and they make Zelda games, and they do Zelda games really, really, really well. If Nintendo came in and says, we have to make a live service game that has operators, and we have to make a battle royale for Zelda, the developers would be like, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So if you just let developers do what they're really good at, then they'll make really good games. And don't try and shove all this unnecessary stuff in because you think it'll make more money. Because you'll just make more money by making a really good product. I don't understand how people don't get this. If you make a good product, it will sell really well because it's really good.
Watch Dogs. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Watch Dogs, and a decade on, the franchise's squandered potential still stinks. The first game famously had its issues. The overly serious revenge story starring Aiden Pierce, an incredibly generic video game protagonist, was a major dud. But the gritty Chicago open world it established did have a lot to love. The hacking mechanics remained somewhat grounded, facilitating interesting storylines and gameplay possibilities that shook up the otherwise familiar open world structure. In an attempt to sort out the tonal issues with that story, the second game focused on a new cast of characters in a more vibrant and personality-filled San Francisco setting. While the characters were strong and likable here, though, they brought their own tonal problems. The freedom players had to gun down anyone they wanted during gameplay clashed with the depiction of the protagonists as anything but murderous psychopaths.
Yeah, that is a problem that a lot of games have. I always think about Uncharted when it comes to this specific problem of the dichotomy, that's a big word, is that the correct one to use? Between the story and the gameplay. The story of Uncharted is a plucky little adventurer who goes in search of goodies in a cave. And the gameplay is, you must slaughter hundreds of people to get what you want. Gun them down, caring not for their families. You must kill all of them.
Perhaps attempting to avoid this mistake again, Watch Dogs Legion moved the action to cyberpunk London and had no main character at all, instead allowing players to jump into the shoes of any randomly generated NPC. Unsurprisingly, this felt like the most incoherent game of the lot as a result, with no creative through line and stereotypical hacker visuals. With 3 games then, Watch Dogs Dogs try to hit 3 different identities. The first being a moody superhero origin story, the second being a funnier, character-driven crime caper, and the third being classic cyberpunk. And if it had chosen just one and ran with it, it may be in a way better place than it is right now. Number 4, Halo.
Oh no.
Brand of arena
Oh no, listen, I'm sorry. Halo fell off at Halo 4. I know a lot of people like Halo 4. I kind of liked Halo 4, but it was the beginning of a steep decline. If you take Halo 1's a 10, if Halo 2's a 10, if Halo 3's a 10, Halo reaches 9, then Halo 4 is like a 6. And then Halo 5 is like a 3. And then Halo Infinite's like a 4 or a 5, so there's a little bit of an upward trend. But man, I've never seen a series so misused. And this has come from a massive Halo fanboy. It fell off so hard.
That stunning sci-fi art direction and, of course, epic overarching story made it the kind of series that people buy a console to play. Since original developers Bungie left the franchise following prequel Halo Reach, though, things have not gone too well. New devs 343 Industries debuted Halo 4 as a franchise reinvention, and initially, things seemed fine. While it was clear the game was missing some of the Bungie magic, it was still an impressive continuation.
You know what I really disliked about Halo 4 is the story, like the enemy, which is, it's not the Covenant, it's a completely different story, it's a completely different enemy. They're trying to go into the lore and the Forerunner stuff, which I think the Forerunners were mostly interesting because you didn't really know anything about them. They seemed like a long, ancient, dead race, and then they went in trying to explain them, and then they had all these like compartments. The second thing I really didn't like about Halo 4 was the armor. The armor really annoyed me because they went from kind of like a very simplistic design to super compartmentalized. I don't know what to call it. It's just itty and bitty. If that's the correct word, there's just bits everywhere in a way to make it like more designed and more cool. I think this is just overly designed. Maybe that's my nostalgia talking, but I think the original armor design is just so much simpler. It's basic, it's nice, it's iconic. And then when they changed it, it's just completely different. And one of the most iconic things about the series is Master Chief and his armor. And then they just made it all itty and bitty and over-designed and overdone, and it's just too much, I think.
Of a story thought to be complete. With Halo 5, though, the wheels well and truly started to come off. Haunted by a misleading marketing campaign that sold a completely different story to what was actually in the game, the series' identity crisis began in earnest, incorporating live service elements into the multiplayer, chopping fan-favorite features, and altering mechanics to fit better with other successful shooters of the time. Sequel Halo Infinite, after a last-minute delay anyway, looked like it was trying to return to the spirit of the original Halo.
And you can really tell they were trying to return to the original spirit because they went back to the original armor design. They were like, ooh, the itty and bitty armor are actually kind of ugly. Let's go back to the original one. I mean, it's just personal preference. I prefer the original design. Some people prefer the new ones. But I'm glad that they went back. That is literally what made me buy it. I didn't even buy Halo 5, and I was a massive Halo 5 boy for years.
Title's art style and initially trying to do right by fans, Infinite had a solid start, but felt surprisingly empty over time. Once again, the community-driven elements that made the series so beloved to begin with, that being, you know, couch co-op, forge mode, etc., were all absent here, proving
that's
that
a problem.
Developers lacked the understanding of what allowed Halo to stand out to begin with. Number 3. Batman.
That's true, it's a shame.
The Arkham trilogy and
I don't know anything about this. This will be fun.
Hugely recommendable series of games. But even in Arkham Knight, an installment I personally think is underrated, you can see the developers moving away from Asylum's defining identity. While that first game had its fair share of gadgets and gizmos, it presented itself mostly as a classic gothic Batman tale in its visual presentation. By the time Knight came around though, the original aesthetic had given way to something more mainstream, a little bit less weird and more indebted to sci-fi tropes.
What is it with this point in time that everyone had to have this crazy mecha car that you could drive around in? Everyone had to have car levels that you had a big tank. Every game had to have a tank. It's weird. It's like the trend where every series had to have like a zombie game, or every series had to have online multiplayer shooters. Like Far Cry 3 had online multiplayer shooters. It's very strange.
That's evident not only in Gotham as a whole, but in Batman's suit, which functioned in this game more like Iron Man's than the Dark Knight's. But of course, the shift in direction was summed up by the incredible focus on the Batmobile, which meant a huge chunk of the gameplay was spent shooting down drones and other tech-focused enemies. A far cry from the mutated monsters and gothic villains of Arkham's first title. But
I think when you make a sequel, you have to get bigger and better, and it's very hard when you start a series as like a down-to-earth superhero beat-em-up. You're like, oh, well, we have to make it crazier, don't we? Or people won't be interested. It'll just be the same thing again. but then you take away kind of what was appealing about the first one. The appealing thing about the first Arkham Asylum, from what I've heard, because I haven't actually played these, so I'm just going off what I've heard, is that people liked running around and feeling like actual Batman, right? It's just like the Spider-Man meme. This game makes you feel like Batman, where you run around and you're a normal human that can do some crazy things because he's a billionaire and he's got all gadgets and stuff like that. But as soon as it gets crazier and crazier and crazier, now you're running around in a tank, just blasting people in a tank and definitely not killing anyone because Batman doesn't kill people, right? So he's got a tank now. We kind of lost our meaning a little bit here.
With the upcoming Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that the Arkhamverse has truly lost its originality. Not only is the visual design more generic, but the gameplay has shifted to a multiplayer looter shooter closer to the Avengers than what made the developers famous. And while that might still make for a great game in the long run, it's a shame it's come at the expense of what got people so interested in this series to begin with. Number 2.
Rubber bullets.
It's pretty easy to pinpoint where it all went wrong for the Wolfenstein reboot. The first attempt at modernizing the veteran series was Wolfenstein: The New Order. It's surprising,
which was pretty good.
It pursued first-person shooting conventions of the time by delivering a decidedly more old-school experience. That ironic freshness, combined with its fascinating alternate history setting of a 1960s where the Nazis won the war, made for a perfect reinvention. And despite...
It's funny, there is still like a little bit of love for those old-timey shooters, where you run around and you grab health packs and you have all those old mechanics that people used to use. There was a game called 40k Bolt Gun, which is a Warhammer 40k game, and it emulates the old style. So this just emulates the old style of gameplay where it just looks like old Doom. And I'm pretty sure this sold really well. There's still a big audience of stuff like this. And I think it's just because it was made really well. Again, this comes back to the crux of the issue. If you do one thing really well, then you'll sell well and people will like your game. But if you try and do everything and you try to appeal to everyone and you become live service and you try to microtransact everything, then it becomes an issue. I don't know what happened with Wolfenstein specifically, but I was just thinking about that Justice League video game that no one liked, because they try to be everything.
Some tonal wobbles, Wolfenstein 2 mostly carried that on perfectly, delivering more robust shooting while going all in on the first title's wackier elements. At this point, the series seemed to be in a good place, and then came Wolfenstein Youngblood. Technically a spin-off, Youngblood was such a misguided project that it managed to sour fans on the franchise as a whole.
I really hope Mass Effect won't be on the list. I know this is talking about Wolfenstein right now, but man, I really love Mass Effect, and it has kind of gone downhill, but they're making a new one, so I have hope.
As
I really hate bullet sponges.
Pointed out, it felt like it was trying to have Destiny 2's lunch as a quote-unquote looter shooter without loot, an approach which was a far cry from what people enjoyed about the first 2 games.
Again, we've changed the idea of the series. We've gone from an old-timey arcade-type style shooter to let's be like Destiny, because Destiny, people like Destiny, right? People bought Destiny, spent a lot of money on Destiny.
Number 1. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon.
Mass Effect's not on this. I know that Andromeda kind of killed Mass Effect, and Inquisition may have slightly killed Dragon Age to a point, but they are making new games. So we can't say that they're dead for certain until those games have come out. I am keeping my fingers crossed. I believe that if BioWare goes back to their RPG roots and makes something in the style of Dragon Age Origins, that people will eat it up. I say Baldur's Gate, I'm gonna say it again. Baldur's Gate sold so well because people wanted a proper RPG. So if BioWare goes back to what they're originally good at, then maybe they can do it. Maybe they can pull it out. I have so much support and love. I don't know what happened with Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, though. The Ubisoft open world curse is insane. They take every franchise they own. It could be Teletubbies. It could be He-Man Master of the Universe. And they'll just shove it in an open world, add these towers that you can climb so that you can uncover more of the map, and then add crafting. Why do they add crafting to every game? I don't need crafting in every game. Sometimes I don't want to craft things. I don't want to pick up 3 sticks of wood and a stone to make a hatchet in every goddamn game. I'm so sick of crafting. Stop putting crafting in video games. Anyway, that was my rant. If you want to see more videos like this, you should check out What Culture Gaming. Thank you so much. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Poggies.